There are reports that Japanese whalers have sent spy flights from Australia to track protest ships that are targeting Japan's annual hunt. Fairfax newspapers say flights were sent to track the Sea Shepherd's anti-whaling vessel, the Steve Irwin, which is trying to intercept the whaling fleet.
The report says flights from Hobart and Western Australia were paid for by a public relations company linked to Japan's Institute of Cetacean Research. The government has not responded directly to the issue but says it's engaged in diplomatic efforts with Japan to resolve the dispute about its whaling program. The Steve Irwin right now is south of Tasmania, about 550 kilometres from Japan's whaling fleet. For more, Steve Irwin Captain Paul Watson joins us via satellite phone from the Southern Ocean. Paul Watson, good morning.
Good morning.
Now, did you notice this plane circling above you early in December when you left from Hobart?
We did notice the plane in December. We thought it was an Australian government plane, so we didn't take very much notice of it. But then 6 hours later, the Japanese vessel Shonan Maru showed up and got on our tail, and we couldn't shake them for 3 weeks.
So what do you believe happened there?
Well, what we found out what happened was that the airplanes were able to identify where we were, and then they sent the Shonan Maru to our position, because the Japanese vessels aren't allowed inside the 200-mile limit. So they were waiting out there for us, and they used the planes to pinpoint us. We then had to go all the way back to Tasmania in order to lose them, and then we knew they would be trying to find us again, so we went under cover of a storm on New Year's Eve and managed to slip past them.
So that's when you left from Perth?
We left from Hobart on New Year's Eve. We left Perth on December 7th.
Okay. Now, these are legal flights. What are you calling on the Australian government to do?
Well, the interesting thing about it is that Glenn Inwood, when he chartered the planes, identified himself as a representative of the New Zealand government. And that, I don't think, is legal.
Right, so do you have a problem with these flights leaving from Australian airports?
Well, yes, the Japanese whaling industry, which is not allowed to have their vessels in Australian waters, are using Australian airports to do surveillance in order to protect their whaling operations. And I think that should be something that the Australian government should put a stop to.
So do you think the Australian government can somehow prevent these flights from leaving Australia?
Yeah, they could certainly make it illegal for the Japanese to charter flights to go and find people who are trying to stop these illegal whaling activities. In other words, these flights are aiding and abetting a poaching operation, because the taking of whales down in the Australian Antarctic Territory is really just plain and simple poaching.
But isn't this just the same as the Australian government sending the Oceanic Viking to the Southern Ocean to act as an observer in these situations?
Well, they did that 2 years ago, but nothing has changed. They're killing whales down here, and the Australian government did promise that they would do everything they could to stop that, but nothing has changed over the last 3 years.
So you're about 550 k's south of Tasmania at the moment, and you're chasing the fleet. How are you going on this trip in terms of catching up with the fleet?
Right now we have the Audie Gill, our small fast vessel, is right on the fleet. So they have it under observation. We know exactly where the fleet is, and we're heading towards that position. So
when do you believe you will be able to catch up with the Japanese whaling fleet?
We will, with the Steve Irwin, we'll be on the fleet in about 2.5 days.
And what do you intend to do when you get there?
Our objective is to sink the Japanese whaling fleet economically. That is to bankrupt them, and we've been doing that for the last 3 years. They haven't made any profits, and we're going to make that a fourth. We cut their quotas in half and negate their profits. It's the only language they understand is profit and loss, and so we're going to bankrupt them.
Well, you were unable to catch the fleet on the previous trip. Will that make this season's efforts on your part unlikely to sink the fleet economically this season?
No, we're ahead of schedule. Last year and the year before that, we caught them in January, and we were able to cut their quotas in half. I think we'll do better this year. We're on to them a little ahead of time this year.
Okay, Paul Watson, thanks for talking to us this morning.
Thank you.